already plagued by decades of war, shifting alliances, and deep-seated rivalries, few conflicts are as dangerous, or as misunderstood, as the one between Iran and Israel. What began as a distant political divide has evolved into a high-stakes confrontation that plays out in cyber attacks, proxy wars, nuclear threats, and shadow operations. These two nations aren't just rivals, they represent opposing visions for the Middle East. One calls for resistance until the other is wiped from the map, while the other prepares daily for a strike it believes is only a matter of time. How did it come to this? And is there any way back from the brink? To understand the roots of the Iran-Israel conflict, we need to rewind to the early 20th century. Before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran, under the rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, maintained friendly ties with Israel. In fact, Iran was one of the few majority Muslim countries that not only recognized Israel but cooperated with it, especially in matters of trade, agriculture, and military intelligence. The two countries found common ground due to their strategic interests, particularly as allies of the United States during the Cold War. This cooperation included the exchange of oil for Israeli military hardware and intelligence sharing on regional Arab threats. But all of this changed overnight, in 1979, when Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile and led the Iranian Revolution. Everything shifted. The Islamic Republic of Iran was born, and with it came a radical new ideology, one that rejected Israel's right to exist. Iran's new leadership declared Israel an illegitimate and oppressive regime occupying Islamic land. Khomeini referred to Israel as the Little Satan, a close ally of the Great Satan, which was the name he gave to the United States. From this moment onward, Iran's foreign policy became openly hostile toward Israel. Diplomatic ties were cut, and anti-Zionist rhetoric became central to Iranian political discourse. Throughout the 1980s, while Israel was focused on threats from its Arab neighbors and internal struggles, Iran was engaged in a brutal 8-year war with Iraq. During this period, the Iran-Israel hostility took a backseat to more immediate national concerns. However, even then, Iran began cultivating a strategy that would shape the future of its conflict with Israel: the use of proxy groups. Iran began supporting armed organizations across the region that shared its anti-Israel ideology. One of the most important of these groups was Hezbollah, formed in the early 1980s in Lebanon. Iran played a key role in founding, training, and financing Hezbollah, which would go on to become one of the most powerful non-state military actors in the Middle East. Hezbollah's open mission to destroy Israel aligned perfectly with Iran's strategic goals. Over time, Iran also began supporting Palestinian groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad, particularly in Gaza, helping them acquire weapons, training, and funding. The 1990s and early 2000s saw a shift in how the conflict unfolded. While there was no direct war between Iran and Israel, a Cold War brewed in the shadows. Israel grew increasingly concerned about Iran's nuclear ambitions. Iran claimed its nuclear program was for peaceful energy purposes, but Israel, and much of the West, believed Iran was pursuing nuclear weapons. This concern hit a critical point in the early 2000s when Israeli intelligence began sounding the alarm that Iran was moving rapidly toward the capability to build a nuclear bomb. The tension escalated further with President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who came to power in 2005. Ahmadinejad repeatedly denied the Holocaust and called for Israel to be wiped off the map, which further strained relations. His inflammatory rhetoric was matched by Iran's continued support of militant groups and the acceleration of its nuclear program. Israel responded with fierce warnings and covert actions. The Israeli Mossad, one of the world's most effective intelligence agencies, was reportedly behind the assassinations of several Iranian nuclear scientists. Cyber attacks like the infamous Stuxnet virus, which targeted Iran's nuclear centrifuges, and intelligence operations deep within Iranian territory. Iran, in turn, continued building its regional network of influence. In addition to Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran deepened its ties with Hamas in Gaza and the Assad regime in Syria. With the outbreak of the Syrian civil war in 2011, Iran saw an opportunity to entrench itself militarily right on Israel's northern border. It began deploying its own forces and funding Shiite militias to support Bashar al-Assad's regime. Israel, alarmed by Iran's growing military footprint in Syria, launched hundreds of airstrikes on Iranian targets inside Syria over the years, despite the risk of wider escalation. While this shadow war raged on, the international community tried to intervene diplomatically. In 2015, the Obama administration, along with major world powers, signed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, also known as the Iran Nuclear Deal. The agreement placed limits on Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Israel, however, vehemently opposed the deal. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu even addressed the U.S. Congress in 2015, warning that the deal would pave the way for Iran to eventually acquire nuclear weapons and use them against Israel. Tensions took a dramatic turn in 2018 when President Donald Trump withdrew the U.S. from the JCPOA, reimposed sanctions, and began what he called a maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Iran responded by gradually violating the terms of the nuclear deal and ramping up uranium enrichment. At the same time, Israel continued its covert and overt strikes against Iranian positions in Syria and elsewhere. In 2020, Iranian nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was assassinated, an act widely attributed to Israel. His death was a major blow to Iran's nuclear efforts and further inflamed tensions. Then came a shocking escalation in January 2020, though not directly involving Israel. The U.S. assassinated Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, the architect of Iran's regional strategy and commander of the Quds force. Soleimani was a key figure in coordinating Iran's proxies, including Hezbollah and Hamas. His death was a major loss to Iran, and although Israel didn't carry out the operation, Iranian officials blamed the U.S. and its allies, including Israel, for the strike. All the while, Iran's military capabilities were growing. It invested heavily in ballistic missile technology and drone warfare. Israel, too, developed sophisticated defense systems like the Iron Dome and David's Sling to intercept missile threats. The balance of power was becoming increasingly dangerous. By 2021 and 2022, Iran had not only enriched uranium to levels close to weapons grade, but had also accelerated weapons testing and solidified its network of armed groups across the region. Meanwhile, Israel worked on normalizing relations with several Arab states under the Abraham Accords, signed in 2020. The agreements with the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan aimed to isolate Iran diplomatically and economically. These new alliances gave Israel more strategic depth, but also further provoked Iran, which saw the normalization as a betrayal of the Palestinian cause and an effort to form an anti-Iran coalition in the region. By 2023, tensions reached new heights. Hezbollah amassed an arsenal of over 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel, while Iranian drones were reportedly used by Russia in the Ukraine war, raising alarm about Iran's growing global reach. Israel stepped up its military drills, preparing for a possible multi-front war involving Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran itself. Cyber attacks between the two nations intensified, targeting infrastructure, banking systems, and government networks. Then came the Gaza conflict in 2023 and early 2024, where Hamas launched large-scale rocket attacks against Israeli cities. Iran was accused of supplying the weapons and training. In retaliation, Israel bombed key Hamas infrastructure. Iran denied direct involvement, but praised the attacks and warned Israel of greater consequences if Iran itself were targeted. In early 2024, talks to revive the Iran nuclear deal completely collapsed, and Iran announced it had achieved uranium enrichment levels close to 90% purity, almost weapons grade. Israel's defense officials began openly discussing the possibility of a preemptive strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. The world watched with bated breath as military exercises and diplomatic warnings flooded the region. If history teaches us anything, it's that even the most bitter enemies have found paths to peace, eventually. The question is, will Iran and Israel take that path, or will they continue down the dangerous road they've been on for more than 4 decades? Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more in-depth stories like this, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Iran and Israel can ever normalize relations, or is conflict inevitable? Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.